Hi, Matt.
The Godfather.
How are you?
Great to have you, Mr.
Great.
Ford.
Nice to see you.
Much like up at Dearborn with the Rouge, this is our assembly line, the
Good.
home of the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. Hello again, everyone. I'm Matt Yocum. Welcome to another edition of the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. And what better way to approach the Detroit Grand Prix than to talk Ford versus Chevy? Edsel Ford II will be here, and we're going to pull longtime factory driver from Corvette Racing, Tommy Milner, out of the simulator, at least for a few minutes, to talk street racing in Motown. But first, huge honor today to have the godfather of Ford Motorsports, the great-grandson of the founder of the Ford Motor Company, Edsel Ford, in studio with us to talk about so much across the entire landscape of history, motorsports, and so many great stories in between. So welcome to our little assembly line, so to speak.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be here.
Why are you in town? The last time we saw you in town, back in January, huge announcement kicking off the 2025 Ford season, and it didn't take long. The great debut, the season opener at Daytona with the Rolex, the Mustang going to victory lane. So that was a nice way to kick off 2025.
Yeah, it was a great way to kick off 2025. Now, I'm here because the Wood brothers are well, the NASCAR Hall of Fame is going to have an event on tonight to open up the new Wood brothers exhibit on the full floor of the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And of course, you know, I'm very close to the Wood family, and this is a big event and lots of history, and they're bringing lots of interesting cars, and so it'll be a wonderful night.
When you look at your history with them, and then when they went to victory lane earlier this year, and the full page ad in the New York Times, I think, what did you think when you saw that, and what parts of that ad really hit home to you? Because you mentioned they're very close. They're one step away from being a Ford.
They are, and a lot of times I talk to Eddie and Len on the phone. We might all be brothers. You know, I think it's having Ford Motor Company congratulate the Wood Brothers Racing specifically about their victory. And it was Josh Berry's first victory, and it was 101, and it all it's just a very nice way to go motor racing. And we've been with them for 75 years now. So it's a great pleasure for me to come here and be with them tonight.
And the loyalty, because all that success, all that history, all under the Ford banner, whether it be Ford or Mercury.
Yeah, and I think they're the only. Jack Roush may be second in a length of time with Ford, but clearly, 75 years is a long time, and they were loyal. They were loyal to the brand. They were loyal to us in the bad times. I mean, Eddie and I talk about it all the time. I mean, we pulled out of motor racing. We pulled out of NASCAR. We pulled out of everything, and they decided to stick with us. And I think that says a lot about them and us and our relationship, and they are part of our family.
And the Ford family, it's not just North America, it's global. And we'll talk about all of your, different stories through the years, not only here, but in France, down in Australia. But starting out with the Mustang, and that's always been a special model and brand to you. And back at the Rolex, to have car, in victory lane, the same number that was in victory lane, 40 years earlier. And I love stats. I love deep diving into things. And when the car debuted a year ago, I tracked down the pit stall that the Wood brothers were in when they last won the Daytona 500.
Right.
You were there with all four of your boys. And I thought, this would make such a Hollywood script if this car could win on this day in that pit stall, which again, racing is reality. It's not Hollywood, so it didn't happen. It took a year, but that car has really ignited a whole nother car crazy kids, because you're seeing kids say, oh, I want a Mustang. And it takes me back to when I was in high school in the 80s of I wanted a Mustang.
Well, it's truly a global car, and it's a global race car, and I think, many years ago I was part of conversations about what do we do with Mustang? Do we race Mustang? we were using other vehicles in other sports. And I made the point that we ought to decide that if Mustang is the vehicle that we want to use, let's take it across all racing avenues. And that's what we did. And so now, with a few exceptions, Pikes Peak maybe one of them, we race Mustang. And it's great. It's wonderful for the brand. It's great for Flat Rock, where the team is. Yeah, and I do want to take just 2 seconds and thank everyone at Flat Rock Assembly for all the great work that they do. I mean, they're as much of this team as anyone, because without them, we couldn't do the cars we do. So anyway, I'll put that aside. Mustang is it's the perfect brand, and across all series, across the whole world.
When you go through the IMSA paddock and you see the fans of all ages, and they've got the Ford shirts on, and they're getting their autographs from all the boys in the Ford camp. But then you go out to the parking lots and you see the Mustang Corral and you see that passion. That really has to, for you, that has to ignite something even more of, we're hitting on it, and we're getting a whole nother generation buying into the love of this car that your dad helped create back in
You know,
'64.
brand loyalty, as you know, is really important to Ford. It's important to everyone. It's especially important to Ford Motor Company, and especially important to Mustang, because I think we'll have Mustang around for the foreseeable future. And without the fans, without the owners, without the people that race them, we couldn't do what we do with the brand. And so it's a huge team effort.
When you go back in time, and everyone always points to Ford versus Ferrari, and what a great movie it was, and that really helped educate so many new fans, which I think is fantastic, because it goes back and it shows your father, the passion he had for winning, but also the love that he had for high performance and all the efforts that he put in. So when you go back and you look at pictures, what was it like to go to Le Mans with your dad?
That's pretty young. Um, I remember bits and pieces of it. But the great thing is, like any son, being able to spend some time with your father, especially in a motor racing situation, it was fantastic. I don't know whether that got me going in motor racing, but it's part of our DNA. Henry Ford won his first race in October 10, 1901, in Grosse Pointe, and when you trace the DNA of Ford Motor Company, it goes back to motor racing, because then 3 years later, Ford Motor Company was established. So if Henry Ford hadn't won that one race in 1901, he couldn't have started Ford Motor Company, the company we know today, in 1903, because he couldn't have raised the money. So, it's part of who we are.
There's so many iconic trophies, but the trophy from that race, which would be beyond priceless, the Punch Bowl. No idea whatever happened to it.
Oh man, I've looked everywhere for the Punch Bowl, everywhere, and it cannot be found. But the problem is, even if we found something that looked like, there was no markings on it. Today, if you get a trophy, there's always a marking on it. Well, back then, I think that the people that put on the race probably just bought it at someplace and didn't engrave it. So
When you look at that time when you're a kid, your dad just says, "Hey, we're going to go to Le Mans. Do you want to go along?" How did that all come about? Do you remember?
I think it's, why don't you come with me? And of course, I said, yeah, I'll come.
To be a Ford in that era, and you look at how car crazy America was in the 50s and the 60s after the war, and how your dad saved the Ford Motor Company and all the high performance. So you're in high school and you get a chance to spend your summers not only with one legend, living with Carroll Shelby, and but also Bud Moore, traveling with Bud Moore in those Trans Am Mustangs. What were some of those special memories with Carroll?
The day I showed up for work. So someone said, well, listen, Carol is at this house. It was an address. And I think I landed at the airport, got into a cab, and went to the house. And I pushed the doorbell, and the door opened up. And the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen in my entire life said, "Yes, how can I help you?" I said, "I'm Edsel Ford, and I'm here to work for Carroll Shelby." It was a great summer. It was great. And they put me to work. I was washing heads and wearing those big gloves you had to wear to wash these cylinder heads. And I worked, and it was great fun.
What did you learn most from him? Because having a chance to have a father who's an icon in the automotive world, and then having someone you get a chance to spend your summers and learn about life from, that's another iconic, one of a kind person, because there's only one and will only ever be one Carroll Shelby, because he was so unique.
He was he's a very special man. But there were lots of different sides of Carroll Shelby. Um, I think I saw a more personal side of him, because we had a lot of personal conversations about, the early days, and then when he went to Africa, and then he came back and he was mad at Ford Motor Company, and then someone said to me, "Well, he now really wants to come back to Ford." And I said, "Why? I mean, he's mad at us. He sued me for some infraction on a car I was doing when I was at Ford Division or Ford Motor Company." And I said, I don't want him. I don't want to see him anymore." And this guy said to me, "Please, Edsel." So we picked a place to go have lunch, and 4 hours later, started up again.
When you look at his impact on auto racing, is it immeasurable just because of the things that he did in that time period? And it's like when you throw a rock in, Lake Erie or Lake St. Clair, and there's all the ripple effects. But doing what he did in the 60s with your dad and the ripple effects globally as far as how it changed racing.
Well, I think my father said important words, and he wanted to win Le Mans. He said to Carroll, "Go win Le Mans," and um, that's what he did. And when Henry Ford II says something like that, the finance people, the engineers, the designers, everyone says,
Yes, sir.
"Yes, sir." And it was an important time. But Carroll never abused his relationship, and especially with me. And we talk, in sort of his later in his career, we would sit down for hours and talk about, well, what was it really like? Did you really, ship these windows on a 747 or front windshields? And and he would tell me stories. I would laugh. Of course, I can't remember any of them today, but when I was with him and we were laughing about these Le Mans stories, about he could call up and say, "I want this, I want that," and it would get done. Because the Ford Motor Company, including my dad, was possessed with winning Le Mans.
And to sit there and give out to a small group the business cards, you better win. And the fact that there really aren't that many that are around, except until recently, when you got back the 66 and 67 trophies, as well as the business card,
Yeah,
which is on display at the Henry
yeah,
Ford.
that's a pretty rare card. And I gave it. I actually someone gave it to me, so I gave it to the Henry Ford, because it was an important part of the history of Ford Motor Company. Because we had never done anything like that before.
When you're there and there's that great picture of you with your dad and the winning drivers and it's the champagne toast. When you look back on that now versus then, because you're in the moment and it's so much going on, but when you look back on it now, is there some memory of that trip that stands out to you that you'll never forget?
Leaving. The end of the race, the champagne toasts were over. My father wanted to go back to Paris, so we got on a helicopter, and I mean, I'll tell you a funny offshoot, not a funny, but kind of a sad offshoot story to all of this. Um, see, we went back to Le Mans in 2016, right? And in 2014, someone said to me, "Chris Amon wants to talk to you." I said, "I haven't talked to Chris Amon since we were in Le Mans in 1966, so 50 years ago." So he said, "Don't worry about it. He wants to talk to you." So Chris and I decided we wanted to start a friendship. it's fun when two men later in stages in life start new friendships. So Chris and I became very close, and I called him up one day and I said, I want you to come to Le Mans with me in 2016 because you need to be there. Because we're celebrating the 50th anniversary, and that's when he told me he had cancer.
Mm.
And I was 2 days away from convincing him to do whatever he needed to do to come with me to come back to Le Mans to be a part of the ceremony. And of course, he died. So it's giving me goosebumps to think about it because the there were so many people I knew that were so important, that were so critically important. I mean, Bruce McLaren, Chris Amon. I mean, they were at the very pinnacle of their career when they won Le Mans for us. And I just was thrilled to be able to talk to Chris and get to know him a little bit more. And I miss him a lot. Good guy.
Were you always into motorsports, or did Le Mans ignite that?
Um, I don't know because during that time of my life, I was into Formula One and sports car racing and the Bud Moore stories of those Trans Am days were the best days I ever spent in motor racing. They were absolutely sensational, but everything ignited me. It was the people, it was the cars, it was the sort of it was just an interesting time to be in motor racing. Everyone was involved. I mean, Trans Am, I said to someone the other day, Trans Am was really interesting because American Motors was there, Chrysler was there, we were there, General Motors was there. I mean, it was the time when the factories came to motor racing and spent a lot of money. Spent a lot of money. And the drivers were amusing. I mean, Penske was there and Bud Moore and
Well, I mean,
it was
look at your Mustang drivers. You had Parnelli Jones, you had George Fulmer, and then Bud Moore and his whole crowd. They were unique. So, what was it like going from race to race, that traveling circus for
It
that
it
year?
was it was unbelievable, but it was the whole thing was really fun because, I mean, poor little American Motors with their Javelin and AMC. I mean, and then, they had Penske building the cars in the very beginning, and Peter Revson, and I mean, there were a lot of really superb drivers of the era. Sam Posey. I mean, it was quite something. It was the creme de la creme.
So you talk about those guys in that era, and I was able to dig out a picture which I had texted you, Eddie, and Lynn Wood in our group chat, and we'll pull it up now. This is the Godfather with his King of Cool
Oh, no.
hairstyle, the shades.
Oh, Matt, what a horrible photograph.
Yep, from Indy, his Val's Parnelli Jones Ford jacket.
Yep, yep.
I mean, the shades, yep, for sure.
I'm trying to think of who the man to my right was the glasses. I don't know who that was. That was fun too. Going to Indianapolis. I think I went 10 years in a row almost. And that's how I kindled my relationship with AJ and I got him to come to Mall with us.
Let's talk about
And
that. So, the 50th anniversary of Dan Gurney and AJ's victory, and where the legend started of spraying the champagne and all of that. When you took him back, was it a surprise that he wanted to go? Because AJ, he can be a little ornery and no, why would I want to go do that? But I was told that it really impacted him. It was extremely sentimental. Is that true?
yes, absolutely. And Leonard Wood was there, and they sat for almost a day talking. And I've got a wonderful photograph of me standing behind Leonard and AJ at Le Mans, and it's perfect. It's here are two senior men with motor racing history that's as long as whatever, having a wonderful time.
And the fact that he showed up and Ford of Europe made a golf cart,
Mhm.
livery of his 67 winner. But I was told that he was completely taken aback by the fan response. But he didn't think anybody would remember or even know
Yeah,
AJ
right.
Foyt. And he was mobbed and he loved it. Loved it.
Well, those were good memories. I mean, it may be the first and last time that two American drivers in an American car went to Le Mans and won the race. I mean, it's pretty unusual.
And that friendship with AJ with your boys going to Indy and the yellow shirts, I mean, they're legendary. The first answer is no, and the second answer is no. But did AJ help sneak in your four
Yeah,
boys
but
at the gas?
we don't talk about
Well, I
that.
mean, statute of
Hush hush
limitations.
kind of. Yeah, well, I mean, AJ knew we were still close friends, and so he knew that my kids wanted to see what Indianapolis looked like, so he was very happy to get them in. They were pretty small, young.
When they were young, does that take you back when you were young and you went with your dad? When you take
No,
your four boys? No,
no, not
completely
at all.
different.
Completely different. Times are different. Everything's different. But when my boys and I get together, the first subject we talk about is motor racing. Oh, and I don't start it. I will tell you that. They have the same passion that I have, so it's fun.
And one of your friends, you named Stewart after one of your heroes,
Oh no, no,
Jackie Stewart. Is
no,
that
no,
not
no, no,
true?
no. That's a good story. No, no, no. We just like the name. So, but
Your
he is a good friend of mine.
when you were in his wedding.
I was. No, he was in my wedding.
He was
Yep,
in your
yep.
wedding. We talk about heroes a lot. And I remember when Dale Jarrett was celebrating his then Winston Cup championship in New York City. And you spoke that night about the importance of heroes and how for you, Jackie Stewart was such an incredible hero. And that for the next generation, it's the Dale Jarretts. That is such an important part of motorsports, I think, because you've got so many young fans that come in and they can gravitate to somebody and use them as a role model. And so many times drivers are like, oh, I'm not a role model, but they really are. And it creates that connection that's going to be a lifetime of love and passion for auto racing.
I think having heroes for young people is an important part of growing up. And I had my fair share. Jackie, Jackie and I have known each other for, I don't know. I mean, it's got to be 60 years. And he was a good racing mentor to me. And he was never afraid to sort of let me inside. And I have a wonderful picture on my refrigerator of my hair when it was that long at some Formula One, might have been Monaco, just kneeling down next to his car right before the start of the race, and he's talking to me. Today you don't do that because you got so much. But back then, Jackie always had time for me. Even my silly questions about this and that, and why would you do a six-wheel Formula One car, and lots of things like that. But they were, and they still are. They are today. Motor racing drivers have never disappointed me, I have to tell you, and I've known a lot of them.
One of your passions, and I saw it firsthand, was the Henry Ford. And whether it's the Henry Ford estate, the Henry Ford where I went when it was Greenfield Village as a kid, but you see all of the racing exhibits. And I guess how much does that drive you to try to find history, to showcase it for others? Because we can learn so much from history, but it's like keeping it around. It's like you're a custodian, so to speak, to the next generation.
Well, and I think adding history is a good thing too. I mean, the great thing about the motor racing exhibit, and we can go way back. I mean, 10 years ago we started talking about, because motor racing is so important to our personal DNA and really to the DNA of our industry. We should have a motor racing exhibit at a permanent motor racing exhibit at the Henry Ford. And so we put it together, and I know you've been there, and it's a superb exhibit. But it talks about the past, and it talks about the future, and it showcases some very important cars that have won very important races. And you see these little kids walking through in awe, looking at the cars who won Le Mans, and some of the other vehicles that are there. It's really important, and I love the Henry Ford. The museum is superb. Greenfield Village is superb. And as you know, I'm the board chair of an organization that's restoring Clara and Henry Ford's home, Fairlane, which I'm having so much fun with, Matt. I can't tell you. It's just been a great journey for me.
It seems like the technology and the metal creates the moments, but it's the people that really create the legacy. And when you go through the Henry Ford or you follow Edsel Ford II through the garage area at any racetrack in America, it's always the people. And you mentioned the Wood brothers and how special they are to you, but there's so many others. And I know that the Ford drivers with Detroit, you hosted them over at the Ford estate, and they just, every word that you mentioned, but it hit home to them the importance of racing in Detroit because of your heritage, your DNA, that success is expected because that's the business you're in. And they all walk away, Dirk, Joey Hand, Mike Rockenfeller, they tell me about what a special night that was to be around the Ford family and see firsthand why they're racing. And is it that special for you as well?
Oh, it's just as special. And I'm going to do it again this year with our new GT3 drivers. And they like it as much as I do. I mean, Rockefeller talks about it today. I saw him at Sebring for some tests, and he said, "Oh, Edsel," he said, "I really enjoyed the time you hosted us at your great grandparents' home." They like it. They understand we're a family company, and that when we race as a family. I've said that to a lot of people that you know very well, that are no longer with us, that I keep on saying, you'll never get rid of, we're family. And one of them is a man that has won a lot of races, and his son is currently driving in NASCAR, and I talk to him a lot. And he's part of our family.
Is there one theme that when you do have those conversations that are similar?
No, because no, because we've known each other for so long, most of my relationships, so we talk about everything. We talk about the car business, we talk about motor racing, we talk about grandchildren. We talk about we're all at an age where medical issues come up all the time. So it's fun. It's my relationship with a lot of these people have changed over the years, but I think for the better.
When IMSA hits town in Detroit, and it just seems like it would be like back in the day where they said, "Hey, Boblo Island, it's free for everybody," and the crowds that would go. When you see the crowds in Detroit, what does that mean to you? Because it has such an energy race weekend in Motown.
Well, we've been doing it for a long time, and I think the fans like it. I think they like it when racing comes to downtown Detroit, because it is who we are, and is the track perfect? No, it's not perfect, but it's a street course. I know very few street courses that are perfect, but I think that the drivers, whether they're in Indy cars or sports cars, I think they enjoy it, and I know the fans do.
When you look at your time going from different disciplines, whether it's IMSA, whether it's NASCAR, we've got Pikes Peak coming up.
Yep.
So we're going to have a Ford involved in Pikes Peak.
Yeah, we've been doing Pikes Peak for the last 2 or 3 years. I love Pikes Peak. I haven't. I've never been.
Rushbrook was telling you that it's going
Yeah.
to be really exciting this year.
Oh yeah. Well, we're going to take a Mach-E up Pikes Peak, so we'll see. It's a challenge opportunity for us. It's like off-road to me. I mean, you go to an off-road race, not a lot of fans, because they can't go park themselves in the middle of the Sonoran Desert. So, but it's good. It's good for our trucks. It's good for the Raptor brand. It shows the durability of our trucks. And so off-road racing for Ford is, it's brand building again.
Now, brand building, when you look on the NASCAR side, and we used to have the banquet in New York City, and there's epic stories that you can never print in a book about all the fun that we all had. But did a group of folks one night at about 3 o'clock in the morning knock on your door and you actually answered?
And they came in. And the folks that came in, I see quite frequently now, and one of them always reminds me how he was shocked. I am in my bathrobe, opening the door and said, "Come on in, guys." So they came in for 10 or 15 minutes. We talked about the party, and I congratulated the winner, and they left.
Well, we'll hypothetically call the individuals late night knocking Jeff Gordon,
Yes.
Ray Evernham,
Yes.
Todd Parrott,
Yes.
probably Dale Jarrett was there.
Yes, they were all there. Yep.
Were
Yep.
they shocked you actually opened the door?
Yeah, oh, they couldn't believe it. I first of all, I didn't understand how they found out my room number. And Jeff was, he was the leader of the pack, and, he said, "Do you mind if I come in and can we come in and talk?" I said, "Sure." So they all piled in and, I had a regular room and I don't know where I sat on the bed, and it was fun. It was fun.
And since you missed out on Gordon's Cup career, although you helped make his then Busch Grand National career, you tried thinking ahead and you signed his son to a contract when
We
he was
did.
born?
We did. And we signed that contract quite a few years ago. And every so often I ask Jeff about it. Whenever you're ready, we're ready. So, but I'll tell you another story of my life. I was preparing to come down to Charlotte yesterday, and my phone rang, and it's Rick Hendrick, and he said, "I just wanted to tell you that I bought the first Mustang." I can't remember the name of the car. Anyway, serial number one at a Barrett Jackson auction, and he said, "I don't have a Ford dealership yet, but I want to tell you I'm supporting you." Isn't
That
that nice?
that is awesome.
Isn't that nice? He didn't have to do that. But those are the kinds of people that I see in motor racing all the time.
If you could go back in time, Quantum Leap, like the TV show, and take your boys and get to spend a day with your late father, what would the itinerary be like? What would you want to do so that they could learn about him and what made him such an incredible person, his passion for business, his love of the automobile?
That's a really good question because I've really kind of never thought about it. Again, Henry Ford II was a businessman Monday through Friday, and then he was a father. I used to go bird hunting with him all the time, and so I would see a different Henry Ford. And we very rarely talked about business. It was more about social kinds of things. And I traveled a lot with him later on in his life and later on in my life, and my father loves my wife Cynthia, and just couldn't get enough of her, and she couldn't get enough of him. So that was a nice thing to have happen. When you marry a woman and your father-in-law or her father-in-law loved her as much as anyway. So he's he's a unique and special man.
So what was the fastest you think he ever went? Do you think that he ever went maybe 202, 203, like you did with Cynthia in your GT?
No, I don't think
And
so.
she was yelling, "Go faster, go
Yeah, she
faster."
was. Yeah, we were at the right at the end of the timed lap that I was on, and I was at 207. There was a bit more, but the end was there, and she was screaming, "Go faster!" But it was my first. It was my first. Well, no, actually, I had been past 200. But you sort of it becomes a blur. You end up looking at the instruments more. I did more than what's going on around you to make sure you're doing the right thing. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Your impact in the business and especially racing. I recall the Rock and Dick Johnson and how a rock almost destroyed his entire career and could have left him bankrupt and the career would have been over. But he was leading Bathurst and a fan had rolled a rock onto the track and he hit it, destroyed his car. And Chris Economaki doing the interview, and you can just see the raw emotion
Uh,
in Dick's face. And fans started calling, I think it was Channel 7, started calling up wanting to donate money. And then you saw that, and what happened next?
well, I called our head of sales and marketing, and I said, I think we have a unique opportunity to help Dick. And I said, if it's okay with you, I'm going to call Channel 7 and tell them that whatever they raise, Ford Motor Company will match. So at the end of the day, we raised, I think the station raised 75,000. We gave 75,000. So it got Dick back up. But I was watching it at home on television. I don't know how the rock got there. And why would you throw a rock right in front of a Ford? I mean, really, why would you do that? It's so mean-spirited in a way. But it helped us. It helped Dick Johnson, and of course, Dick runs one of the best teams that we have down in Australia. So, and he came up, and I presented him with the Spirit of Ford Award this year, and he's another man who has been with us almost since day one. I think it's 40 years or something. It's been a long, long time.
When you go back in time and you turn 16 and your dad, you know, runs the company, what car do you get for your very first car when Edsel Ford II turns 16?
Mustang. A Mustang. I actually have a garage in Detroit where I keep my cars and some of my photographs and other things, my memorabilia. I have the rendering of the Mustang, my Mustang. And then I found the serial number the other day. I was wandering through some files, and there's a wonderful guy in Phoenix, Arizona, who actually has a database to can track serial numbers. And I think he starts at 1965, and this was a 65.
Mr. Marty.
Yeah, Mr. Marty. You know Marty.
Yep.
So I normally call him on the phone, but this time I thought I would send him an email. He's on his way to Europe. So anyway, we couldn't find anything about the car. The serial number wasn't in the system. And then Marty said to me, "Well, we should go to another." And I thought, "Oh God, this is too hard." But
Was it a one of one? Was
it
it
was
special?
it was a pearlescent white fastback Mustang with a 302 and a beautiful, just a single blue stripe over the car. And I remember it because it was Christmas Day and it was snowing in Detroit. And my father brought the car around the front. He said, "Come to the front door. I want to show you what we're going to give you for your birthday," because my birthday is December 27th, so it coincides well with Christmas. I opened the door and there it was. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was beautiful.
What happened to it?
Well, I loaned it to a friend of mine in Long Island, and we had a long driveway in the house we lived in Long Island, and he took it too fast down the road, and he went off the driveway into a potato field and rolled it several times. So it's no longer exists.
Oh, man.
But there is this company called Revology Cars. You know Revology? So I was thinking the other day, maybe I should call them up and have them just make me a car that looked like my first car. It would be sort of fun.
Is there one day, if you could, it's kind of like Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, the movie,
Yeah.
where you could live over and over the same special moment?
Huh.
I go back to when the Wood Brothers won and you were on the pit box, all four boys were there. And that was such a special moment, father and sons. Anything pop into your head that you'd love to go back and relive that day one more time?
You know, it's hard to say, Matt, because I've had so many times in my life where I've been around a victor, or been around people, or have done something in motor racing that has been so impactful on me. So no, there's not one. There's several. I mean, I was there for at least the last couple of years, two or three of the Wood Brothers victories. Our victory in 2016 at Le Mans. I mean, being there with Chip Ganassi it was really, I mean, standing and watching the television, as there's 10 laps to go, there's 9 laps to go. I mean, it was incredible.
Was it as nervous as it was in 66?
Oh yeah. Oh, it was more because I was older. And Cynthia was with me and Bill was there and Bill's kids were there, and it was really nerve-wracking because I thought we were going to come in 1, 2, 3, except Ferrari got in the way. But we were close. We were close.
And there's a very sentimental picture of you and your cousin Bill up on the stage. Captured a moment in time.
Yeah. The other thing that before the start of the race, there were a bunch of Ford GTs that were there, and they chose a man that I knew from Texas to take his car out. So he turned to me and he said, "Do you want to drive my car?" I said, "Yes." So I took Aaron Shelby, who's Carol's grandson, who's a good friend of mine, and we went around Le Mans. I'd never done that, ever. If I had, I don't remember. But I mean, going down the Mulsanne Straight at 80 miles an hour, but still, you get this sense of how long the Mulsanne Straight is and the corners. And that whole trip in 2016 was really remarkable, really remarkable.
And that really touched so many different generations. And when you look at 2025, do you feel like that we're at a point, everything is cyclical, but we're in that rise of auto racing and high performance, especially with your company, going F1 and the new LMDH car and what you've done so far in IMSA and NASCAR and everything else that's got Pikes Peak. But do you feel like we're getting ready for another huge rocket booster type launch of the love of the car and the love of performance? Because it seems like a couple generations, they were kind of mixed about it, but it seems like this current crowd of young kids are all in on performance. I see them at car shows, concours events, and they are just eating up with it. Do you feel like everything that you're seeing that we're getting ready for another huge wave?
Well, I certainly hope so because Ford is doing a lot. The Formula One engine program is really important. It's important to Ford. It's important to our fans. The LMDH car, as you and I talked earlier, there's not much I can tell you about it because I don't know too much. But to go and say to the world, we're out to win, the overall victory at Le Mans again, would be remarkable.
Certainly sends a statement.
Now, I'll ask you a question. I was thinking the other day that in 2027, I think, right? Is that when we take the LMDH car?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
AJ Foyt will be 90?
Road trip.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
I mean, can you imagine?
Would that be fun or what?
AJ back at Le Mans once again, that would be incredible.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about it. I want to see. I want to go down the road a little bit, see how the car is, but wouldn't it be fun?
Oh my gosh,
It'd be great fun.
that would be such an incredible.
And I bet you if he could do it, he'd come.
Oh, he would. He would. That would be such an incredible chapter in a book that you have of your life is just memory after memory and people that you have touched all along the way. And thank you for coming by and spending a little bit of time with us. We could go on and do part 3, part 6 of so many of Edsel Ford's stories.
Let me just say one more thing because we touched a little bit on it, but we are a global company with global racing footprints all over the world, and one of the ones that I'm continually interested in is Australia, because I lived there for 3 years, and was very much involved in the motor racing program in Australia. So keep your eye on that because we've got some great Mustangs down there. We got some good drivers this year. We've got good teams. So I'm excited about the Supercar Series in Australia.
But see, I love your passion. So it doesn't matter where it is globally. Ford has its fingerprints on something automotive that's being raced, and it certainly is successful. So, Mr. Ford, thank you for coming by.
Nice to see you.
Great to see you. And have fun at the Wood Brothers event.
I will. Thank you.
And we can't wait to see you next time right here in studio on the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast.
Thank you.
So that you're up to date on all things IMSA, including Mr. Ford's beautiful Mustangs, check out the IMSA page on YouTube. Besides watching previous episodes of our show, you're not going to want to miss any of the Win the Weekend Season 3 presented by Michelin. Laguna Seca has dropped, and it's a great one. Programming note, remember that in 2025, you can watch the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series live on IMSA's YouTube page, commercial-free in the United States and for IMSA fans around the world, thanks to our friends at Michelin. Stay locked in, as the kids say, on IMSA WeatherTech content with our pals in the paddock, from This Week in Sports Cars to the Double Stint podcast and the Midweek Motorsports podcast. All great shows loaded with entertaining and educating content. While there on YouTube, remember to subscribe to our show or head over to your favorite podcast app destination to listen to the audio version. Leave your comments and feedback or hit me up on X. We'd love to hear from you. Well, thank goodness the engineers have to eat because we're catching up with Tommy Milner, longtime factory Corvette driver from the GM Tech Center, where, Tommy, you and Antonio Garcia have been spending about 3 days working in the sim for upcoming races. So first, thanks for taking time out and stopping by the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. If I look a little dreary-eyed right now, it's because I've been staring at the computer screen for 2.5 days, but all good things.
Well, looking ahead to that, and when you pencil in simulator time, how crucial now with a relatively new car versus something that's tried and true?
It's super important. Having this tool available to us is a pretty it's a huge help. It's something that we've used now for many, many years. I think back the first time I was here to this location in Huntersville, a pretty simple tire model and car model at that point, and to see where we've come today and how much it's utilized for us, whether it's working on new cars. This Z06 GT3R was developed in the sim first, same with C8R before that. And now in present day stuff, lots of time and energy spent on running setups and tire model changes, things like that. All in the name of trying to make this Corvette go faster.
Well, we hear it so often. Hey, I spent time in the sim, and so many fans never get a chance to see. We've got a little bit of a mystery science theater version of working in the sim on Daytona, and it gives fans an idea really of what you're going through and how you're utilizing this tool. So, helmet, do you wear your racing gloves, shoes? Attire wise, what do you use when you're in the sim to kind of give you a little bit of that same feel that you're behind the wheel?
Yeah, so for me, I just different for some other manufacturers and things like that. Some wear helmets. For us, it's just usually racing gloves and shoes, no helmet. We wear a headset, kind of similar to this. Um, so we're pretty immersed in the car when we're in there, and I think that's obviously the goal as well. Is as you see the thing moving on the platform, um, that 360-degree sort of view, so to speak, of all of the trackside stuff around you gives you your sensation of speed. All of these things are done, of course, to try to kind of trick the mind into believing that you're driving the real thing. And certainly, as time has gone on, it becomes more and more refined and closer to the real life thing. The car model improves, the tire model improves. All these things are constantly evolving and changing. And in reality, when I'm sitting in the car, I can look around, look out of the left hand side door and right hand side, and I can see trackside stuff. So um, yeah, it's all done to try to mimic real life. Sometimes we've had seatbelt tensioners, we've had like airbags in the seats again to sort of simulate G forces as well. So it's a fine balance of using all of these little bits of technology and ways to try to trick the mind and the eye that you're in driving the real thing.
Now, Edsel Ford mentioned that he had a chance to get into the simulator for only about 2 minutes, and then he got nauseous and ceased his fun behind the wheel. And I've talked to different drivers through the years, and depending on the discipline, the older ones all seem to say that they don't like the simulator because they tend to get a little bit car sick. But the younger guys, like yourself, no problem whatsoever. Why do you think that is?
Well, I'm glad I'm still considered young.
Well, you're under 40. We got about six
That's true,
months.
just barely. Um, I've done sim racing since before I ever even got in a go-kart. So it's been a sort of a passion of mine for a long time. I do find it initially, if I haven't been to the sim in a little while and I get in the first run is a little bit disorienting a little bit, and you have to almost tell yourself and convince yourself that to trust the things that you're seeing and feeling to help kind of put you into a better headspace, so to speak, to understand what's happening. So um I don't know why exactly that would be why younger guys, it maybe it's just sort of your equilibrium at a younger age is a little bit more in tune with everything else in your body, and as time goes on, that fades away a little bit potentially. Um, but yeah, it is a little bit disorienting just at first, and then as time goes on, it gets a little bit better.
When you talk about the realism of it, Joey Hand told me when he was working on Le Mans that there was in the sim, there was this older lady and she had flowers, by her house, by the racetrack. And then when he got to Le Mans, he's like, oh my gosh, there's the older lady's house and there's the flowers. He couldn't believe
Yeah,
how real, even down to flowers.
Yeah, we always at Le Mans. We're doing some Le Mans prep right now. There used to be, it's no longer there, so you can see how up to date the track models are. But there used to be a green horse after Tet Rouge on the first part of the Mulsanne, and that would be a reference for us in the sim or in real life, and we would just glance down and see what our speeds were, as a reference. So yeah, the these days the tire model, the car model, the track model are so close to real life that there's a lot of value in having this tool available. Um, it's not perfect by any means. There's still, like, we are still developing with Michelin and tire models to try to make it as realistic and accurate as possible, but we're getting closer and closer to the real thing, which just makes the data that we get from these sim sessions that much more beneficial and helpful, and helps drive, um, car setup, helps drive car development, all those things that at the end of the day is saving a lot of money, saving a lot of time, saving a lot of car parts, because we certainly spin out quite a bit and hit the wall in the sim here quite often too. So it just lets us as drivers kind of push the envelope a little bit easier and find the potential of the car faster.
Last year, you were on the front row at the Detroit Grand Prix. How much pressure, I guess, would be on you more so going to Detroit versus maybe some other races just because it's the home turf for General Motors? You've also got Ford Motor Company. I mean, it's the automotive capital of the world, and it's a great event, mega fan turnout. So it checks all the boxes. So does it also check a little extra pressure to perform and produce on the streets in Detroit?
Uh, it's hard to say more pressure because I think we feel the pressure no matter what, anyways, no matter where we go. We have such great Corvette racing fans, and to see them on the weekend and see their passion and their excitement to be there for the race, that adds almost more pressure, I would say, than being in Detroit. I think part of it too, though, is the leadership from the very top at GM, um, all the way down to us on the team, are so passionate and so into racing that, um, the times when we see people like Mark Royce or Jim Campbell at the racetrack, they're so in tune with racing and what's going on in the racing world at that moment, that you can have a conversation and talk about what you've done for setup, and you don't have to try to make them understand why maybe this weekend we're not quite as quick as we were on a previous weekend. They get it, they understand. So you want to perform for GM, for Chevy, and for those guys as well, but at the same time you feel like you have a lot of support from people like them. Um, so in some ways, yes, you could say more pressure, just because you want the weekend to be exciting for them. But like I said, you feel that no matter what, anyways, because we know they're watching, no matter if it's at Detroit or if we're in Florida.
Well, if you look at the faces of Corvette racing, yourself, Ron Fellows, but if you're looking at someone that's not behind the wheel, that would be the legend, Doug Feehan. And he told me that one of the big things that drew him to you was when you hosted the Michelin on Main event. That's such an important criteria, your interaction with the fans, but he was so impressed by how you hosted and how you were all in away from the car. Was that the when you look back to your big breaks through your career, especially now that you get a little bit older, it seems like when we mature and we get a little older, we think back to when we were young, like, wow, that was such an important, impactful moment in my career. And was that one of those moments that you look back on and go, wow, that really helped me springboard into the Corvette job and then all the great things that happened following?
It's a great story to bring up, and it's one that I reference a lot when I have young kids, who ask me about, guys that are in racing, looking for advice in some ways. And in that moment, I had no idea that anybody was watching. I was just doing what I felt was the right thing to do at the time, which was some great fans that were there to see the race cars and had some questions about the car. Um, so yeah, it's kind of a lesson learned, it was for me at the time, after I I didn't hear that story until well after I had gotten the job with Corvette. So I didn't know that that was a turning point in Doug's mind, at least. Um, but yeah, you never know who's watching. Um, Things like that. I mean, racing, obviously, your on track performance is the most important thing in many ways, but not far behind is, how you interact with the fans, with leadership within the company, with sponsors, within your own team. Um, all those things. At the end of the day, it's a team sport. The drivers like to get or end up getting a lot of the attention in many ways. Um, but it takes so many people to have success in racing, and it is the off track stuff that does end up having just as much of an impact, especially on longevity in the sport. So it was for me, certainly, hearing that story and seeing how what to me was a pretty normal interaction. Um, you just never know who's watching, you never know who's listening, and got to be on your game at all times, whether it's driving the race car or if it's interacting with the fans.
I tell people all the time, racing is one big process of learning. It doesn't matter what age you are. And Edsel Ford was talking about, he spent his summers, whether high school or college, traveling with Carroll Shelby and living with Carroll Shelby. And then in college, it was Bud Moore when he had the Trans Am Mustangs in 70 and 71. For you, I know for me, I spent my high school and college summers with IROC, working out of Tinton Falls, New Jersey, and also the events on the road. For you, you spent some time working for your dad's team. What was the biggest learning lesson that you picked up along? And then also, did you happen to wreck anything? Because that seems to be a theme. I mean, at least it was for me in IROC. Had a little fender bender at Michigan one time. But what are some of those memories?
My childhood was around cars and the racetrack generally. Um, I mean, a lot of time was spent playing sports for sure. So I didn't live at the race shop. My dad owned PTG, and was only 20 or 30-minute drive from our house. So summer times were spent there, and for me, in reality, the early parts of or my childhood was I, I s- I associated more with with the team owner side, with sort of the engineer side, the mechanic side, because those were the guys that I interacted with and enjoyed the races and enjoyed interacting with the drivers at the time. So for me, it wasn't about the driving aspect at first. So I think just being immersed in the racing world was in many ways, like once you kind of get that first taste of cars and racing, it's hard to ever kind of give that up again. And it certainly started with that. So yeah, I mean, as a kid, I was ripping around on golf carts and flat carts and stuff like that to have some fun, which I'm sure was annoying for a lot of the guys at the time. But I did as I got older. Then I worked in the body shop with the guys there, and did a lot of body work for a while. Did some carbon work and stuff like that. So um, didn't work on the cars so much, which was probably a good thing. At that age, at 13, 14, 15 years old, um, entrusting the lives of these race car drivers with a kid like me working on the car was probably not the best idea. But I wouldn't say I made the cars pretty either. I think I just did a lot of the prep work to make for the guy Dougie in the paint shop there to make it look pretty. But yeah, just still to this day, I mean, the camaraderie with all of those guys, all of the people that you work with on the race team. I remember that being a highlight of going to the race shop as a kid, just how the guys interacted and the fun that they would have at times. Seeing that still to this day, and carrying a lot of that same mentality. When you're hanging out with the crew guys, those are guys that work long hours. And I saw that as a kid, right? You see when you have an accident, what that means for those guys, and means long hours at the racetrack or long hours at the shop. Um, so very fortunate as a kid, obviously, to be around that environment, seeing that from an early age. Um, just again made me appreciate racing, appreciate what those guys go through, um, and just appreciate how much fun and exciting and just racing in general is. Um, I do often think about those times when I was younger of being at the race shop, and Um, Again, it kind of makes me, not that I've ever forgotten it, to be honest, but makes you appreciate being in this sport and the excitement that it brings for me, for my family, for friends, for the fans. It's a fun sport.
Well, when you look at you're at the track, you're at the simulator, you're focused on the task at hand, Detroit, Le Mans, the races to come. What do you do to check out, to totally break away for a mental break? Because that's what everybody needs, especially in such a high pressure situation as drivers today with all the demands on them. So, what's your go to for breaking away?
To be honest, it goes back to sort of the last topic. It goes back to, hanging out with the guys and talking about something other than racing. Um, they become like family in a lot of ways. And so when you are at the racetrack, those people, those, men and women on the team is a way to get away from the racetrack. Even so, you're going through it with them, if whether it's good or bad. Um, but everybody has their own hobbies and interests and things like that. So talking about those things, I mean, right now the topic for us and my crew chief, Mac, is hockey. The NHL playoffs are on right now, and he's a big hockey fan. So, um, we chit chat about that basically. So, uh, for me, I mean, at home it's easy for me. I have two little kids and then another one on the way, and a wife, and a life outside of racing there. So it's easy to check out, whether it's wanted or not. The kids obviously take a lot of the time. Um, but at the racetrack, it kind of just goes back to, interacting with those people that end up becoming like family to you. Especially for me, having been with Corvette Racing for so long and Pratt and Miller. Um, I've worked with a lot of the same people for so many years now that they have become family in many ways.
So you mentioned hockey, and I always live like in the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. So I'm a Detroit fan, Red Wings, Tigers, and I always go back to Mark the Bird Fidrich, a legend in the 70s. Wish he wouldn't have had the injury because he would have had such a stellar career. And then we segue back to the Rolex 24. So, what was the conversation like with your mom after she saw you shoot the bird to the BMW, which all your fans are like, "Right on. I'm not happy with what they did." And but what did she say to you?
Uh, yeah, she has a very high opinion of me. If you ask my sisters, who are both in the racing world as well, um, that I'm kind of put on a pedestal in many ways. Um, she the first dinner I remember having once I was back home again is she said something to the effect of, she's like, "I thought you were a nice guy. I never pictured you doing that, And the first thing I did say to her afterwards was, "Well, I've tricked you, I think, for many years here, Mom." But yeah, my mom's amazing. She's has for almost my entire career been very concerned about me all the time, and tells me before every race to be safe. I've convinced her over the years to say go fast and be safe. So I've gotten her a little bit more motivating in that way too. Um, yeah, just a crazy moment in my career for sure. Just especially not so much. I mean, the on-track action was extraordinary. We'll put it that way. Um, but everything that happened afterwards as well was also extraordinary with the response from fans and colleagues basically alike. Obviously the t-shirt stuff that came afterwards as well, and turning those profits from the t-shirts that we sold into donation to the American Eagle Foundation as well. So what was a pretty disappointing part in my career has luckily been sort of, the bad part of it has been muted slightly with the positive has come from it.
But see, I think if you look at it in one way, the fact that it shows, true emotion, and your fans were riding along with you shotgun, and they were right there, and then to go ahead and show the emotion, and then to take it a whole step further. How did the idea come up as far as the donation, the T-shirt sale, 'cause I bought a T-shirt to donate to the great
Yeah.
cause. And but how did that next step take place?
It was all a whirlwind for sure. It was, I saw pretty early on that there was, I was getting messages from fans that were saying, like, sort of showing me the t-shirts that were trying to be sold with it. And um for me, the moment, I'd rather not be known just for sticking my hand out the window and expressing my feelings at the moment. Um, so I wanted to try to, in many ways, just stop people from making a quick buck on the moment. I could tell that it was gathering quite a bit of momentum
Getting ready
on
to go
social
viral.
media.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, um, yeah, it was just a quick sort of thought in my head that I should do something, sell t-shirts in some ways, but have it be have it for a good cause. Kind of in some ways, try to. I didn't know how it would go down with leadership at GM, so I figured minimizing the damage there was by donating the profits. So I did have a quick text from the producer who does the Win the Weekend stuff, JF. He was just talking about the moment with me, and I mentioned doing the t-shirts, and he had he had said mentioned donating the proceeds to a bird charity, and instantly I was like, that's exactly where it's going to go. And so I just did a quick Google search for a bird sanctuaries and charities and things like that, and quickly that popped up was the American Eagle Foundation. And I kind of knew from that point that that's where I wanted the money to go to, but now I needed to have the conversation with them to see if they'd be interested in even partnering with this moment. And I didn't know how, um, you know, I wasn't sure that they wanted to be associated with me flipping the bird. And luckily, when I sent the email off to Jessica there at American Eagle Foundation, she had seen the report on some news site, basically. Not a huge race fan, but knows of racing and knew a little bit about sports car racing in some ways. And so luckily I didn't have to fully explain the situation. She had already read the news reports about it and was super enthusiastic to be involved. And they've been super, helping wherever they could with, for me, with some tax questions that I had about the whole process, because this was all new to me as well. There was a lot of stuff in the back end that I wasn't really prepared for. um, but yeah, it was within the day. I messaged the artist Abel Toth, and he was all into helping with the cause as well. So everything really just kind of fell into place.
That's one thing I love about racing. There's so much great competition on the track, but there is so much good that people do away from the track with so many different philanthropies. And this was another great opportunity to give back, which you certainly did. And your fans, man, they jumped on board big time. So we don't want to burn up your entire lunch hour, but looking at another win, 20 wins so far going to Detroit. you know, if you can prognosticate, last year on the front row, what you and the Corvette team are hoping, from past trends this year going into Motown.
I mean, the goal has been, for a long time, has been win. You know, um, we've been close a couple times, Nikki and I, with this new Z06 GT3R to getting the win for us. I know the three car guys have gotten the win. We're very eager. Um, but again, we can't, knowing how competitive this class is, this series is, um, running off emotion is not the way to win races. That's for sure. You're continuing to lean on all the people at Pratt and Miller and Corvette Racing to, really, uh, dot our I's and cross our T's. Um, being as diligent as we possibly can from the very beginning of the weekend. It starts here in the sim as well. We'll get some time here at the end of the day to do some prep for Detroit as well. So, um, one of these things, you can't force it. Obviously, like I said, we've been close in numerous occasions. Sometimes things have not gone our way, whether it's been self-inflicted or not. Um, the car was fast there last year, so I think on that sense, we take that momentum into the weekend. I really enjoy street races. Had a lot of fun at Long Beach this year. Looking forward to going back to Detroit again, and racing on the streets there. It's a pretty tricky racetrack. It's bumpy. Um, Nicky wasn't super fond of the racetrack last year, so I've been trying to pump him up a little bit and get him excited for the weekend. So no, it's exciting. It's great to be. The atmosphere at street races are always great. It is ramped up a little bit because it is in Detroit, right there in the shadow of the Rensen. Eager, excited, ready to go. Kind of want to put last year behind us a little bit with how it ended for us. But also I feel like we've had good races so far this year at times, and feeling like it's time to kind of put it all together this time.
So how do you get Nicky pumped up? Because I had one driver tell me before qualifying at an event a couple of years ago, yeah, I was just up in the transporter and I was watching Top Gun. I was getting myself all psyched up and pumped up for qualifying and then the race. So how do you get Nicky a little bit more jacked up going into the weekend?
Nicky's a big Celsius energy drink guy, so I want to give him a couple Celsiuses there to get him amped up. Some music. He's a big music guy as well. So some music. I think maybe I'll get some speakers and I'll pump it into his hotel room at night to get him some REM sleep and add in some techno music for him. So in reality, Nicky's such a competitive spirit, that having a good weekend, being fast, and all the practice sessions, um, that is enough usually for him to get amped up and get excited. So um, it is a bit better already. I know last year leading into the weekend, he was already just like down on himself for whatever reason. He's not. He's definitely better than last year. So I'm looking forward to the weekend.
See, I mean, it is Motown, and you could really pump in a lot of Kid Rock. I mean, that would be appropriate with the whole theme of the
Yep.
weekend. But looking when you were a kid, Edsel Ford, his first car, which again, his dad, was owner of the company, ran the company. So he got a special one of one Ford Mustang. I had a Mazda RX-7 that was a few years old. So what was Tommy Milner's first car when he got the license and he was able to legally drive on America's highways?
First car was mom's old station wagon. It was a BMW 5 Series station wagon. Had some cool BBS wheels on it. So that was fun. I was playing lacrosse at the time. It was a long stick D-man, so it was a good car for the long lacrosse stick, the stick in the back there. Um, yeah, at that point in my life and my dad's career as well, BMW was a big part of it. So had the BMW early on, and then soon after, my dad's always been a big fan of toys in general, whether it's little car models or wants the latest and greatest of cars and things like that. So pretty soon after that, when the Mini Cooper came out in the U.S., that was he bought it for me, but in reality,
You bought it for
it was
him.
more of a he bought it for him. Good excuse for him to buy the car. So um, yeah, that was for sure as a kid, fun cars to have growing up. At that point, I'd already been driving the race cars a little bit at times too at the end of test days. So in reality, driving the cars in the street already felt a little bit slow to me in some ways too. So probably a good thing for me because I did lose my license as a kid for getting speeding tickets, too many speeding tickets early on. And I can only imagine if I hadn't gotten that Need for Speed out on the racetrack, how much worse it would have been.
I can tell you this, that V.Y. Smith, who was the county clerk in Volusia County, Florida, and Judge Clayton, both I had spent some time with and a little bit of money with when I was 16, 17 years old. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. I mean, I was told by the judge when I had to go there to lose my license for the first time. She was
First time?
dumbfounded that well, yeah, only time, thankfully,
Okay.
so far. I've been good lately. She was surprised that I didn't challenge any of the speeding tickets. I was speeding, and I paid the fine and got the points with it. So, um, I was hoping that I'd be able to keep driving into school and back, but that was denied. So, um, yeah, not the best time in my driving career for sure, but in the end. There was only 6 months, and learned a good lesson then, and I've carried that that threat of losing my license again ever since then.
And see, I had a friend who worked on the Ormond Beach Police Department. He said, whatever you do, just go in and plead no contest, because you're falling on the sword. You're admitting, yeah, I was the knucklehead. I did it. But please help me not lose my license and raise my insurance. So it worked. And it worked almost every time until the very end. Well, Tommy, we don't want to take any more time away from you in the simulator, chasing win number 21, getting ready for Detroit. So thanks for stopping by and spending a few minutes telling some great stories about growing up and racing.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me.
All right. Tommy Milner, appreciate stopping by. Edsel Ford as well, and you, the fan. Thanks for stopping by another edition of the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. For the entire team, I'm Matt Yocum. Until next time, we'll see you at the track.